Carolina. My children went to camp up here. So I have walked these waterfalls and mountains and since I was a tiny little girl. And I knew I had to get back to the mountains. And the one thing that I knew I needed was a church family. And I could remember talking to Charlotte and saying, I'll be okay to leave everything that I knew that was special and wonderful to me, was to find a place that I could worship with other people. And I could find a God that worked with me that was similar to what other people were living of their own lives. And that was walking the talk. And so when I found Namaste, I knew that the one thing in my life that I really had been looking for since an early childhood was a family to walk life with. And I guess in my own home, Catholicism gave me a lot of wonderful tools. I look back onto it now, and many friends, but it also that, I can remember hearing my mother saying you can't go to other churches. I think that gave me the thirst to know other churches. There was something there that, well, my grandmother goes to a different church, and my grandmother, invites me to come and sit beside her. And so I know they're up there today, and I have to thank my mother because when she died, I went into the bedroom, and beside her bed was a Bible. Now, my mother didn't say very much. She didn't talk very much, but my mother was a silent, probably one of the most gifted healers on this planet. They told me that in the nursing home where she was, that she would go sit beside the people every day for hours and just hold their hands of the men and women that couldn't talk anymore, and they probably were in comas or whatever it was, but she would just sit there and pray with them. And so I remember that, and my mother, I would say, taught me this deep spiritual love for just being in the silence, something that I criticized her for many years. But now I understand it, that her way was just different. And it was in a silent reverie. I think she's probably one of the most spiritual women I've ever known. And so I remember knowing she went to church twice a day when she was in the nursing home. And her reverence to her own way taught me that whatever it was, you had to work it. You had to show up. And so to me, the biggest blessing is to have a place to show up with, where I know I'm loved, I receive love, I can give love, and I've learned the steps, to finally coming to peace within my own life. And in the Daily Word, it's interesting, Mary Kupferle started this one, and Charlotte knew Mary, and she's probably one of the greatest women I've ever met in terms of teaching me spiritual principles. And the first one, and this is what my grandmother had sent me, you are wonderful because you are a child of God. You have been created in God's own image and likeness according to a divine idea of perfection. And it was the first time that, I understand that it was okay to be perfect because we're all perfect, just in an imperfect way. And it taught me so much. And then at the end of it, there was a poem. It started with, each morning when I wake up, I say, I place my hand in God's today. I know God will walk by my side, my every wandering step to guide. God lead me with the tenderest care, where paths are dark and I despair. No need for me to understand if I but hold fast to God's hand. And I can say there's many times in my life that I have really felt despair and wondered, how do you go on? How do you do that? How do you deal with it? I could teach anybody else how to deal with despair, but when I had to face my own, it's when the journey changed. And I had to recognize that I was just like the people that were sitting across from me, and it was time for me to let other people know, that I needed help too. And I think the greatest gift I ever got is when I decided to, go away and look at my own things and go to treatment, and that my daughter was actually, she was the mother. At the time, she was probably stronger than I was, and she was 16 years old. And I reverence her today for her spirituality and her journey with mine. And we walk together in such a union. But it's during those times of despair, and depression and anxiety and fear that we need people the most. And this is what my journey has given me. It's given me the people that I need to walk the walk with me. And I thank all of you here, for your gentleness and for your love for me. And the hardest thing in the world for me, it was easy to stand up here and talk, but what is really hard is to be intimately connected with you. And so I continue my journey here, looking how to open myself to letting love in. And certainly I have needed it with some of the physical challenges I've had, but I have it today. And I'm not afraid to ask for it, which is to ask for help, so as well as to give help. So I want to thank each and every one of you. It's been a gorgeous journey, and a troubled journey, a struggling journey, a happy journey, a peaceful journey, whatever it is, it's all been there just like you. So this is my journey, and thank you.
Okay, yes, I didn't mute it. Okay. So, that was fantastic and beautiful, and we're so glad you're here, Julie, and you're an inspiration, and thank you so much for everything you blessed my life with and everyone here. Okay. So I'm going to follow up. I want to dovetail a little bit with what Julie spoke of here. And, I too started what I would say my serious spiritual journey at Unity of the Palm Beaches. And that was back in the 80s and early 80s. And it was kind of an interesting way I ended up there. But I landed there. And Lassie, as Julie said, she was a powerhouse. This woman was amazing when she spoke. It was just beautiful, and she was so powerful, and she'd stand in front of that shell, and there'd be 600 people in there. I mean, the church would be packed, and you would see her aura behind her, and she was an amazing woman, and I'm so grateful to have been able to walk a journey with her for a few years. And anyway, Hal, her husband, they co-founded this church. They were way ahead of their time. It was leading edge. They had a huge campus right in prime property in West Palm Beach on the Intercoastal. Beautiful church. They had everything. You got to realize this was 50, 60 years ago, and they were bringing shamans in and biofeedback and natural healing, all sorts of really cool things. So that was a really great gift that they offered the world, and it was an amazing place. And so I also, in 1993, started the Palm Beach Center for Living down there. It rented a house in the back of the property, and that's where we got our roots. And it was a wonderful journey. 11 years. We did eventually move, but it was a wonderful place to be. And so I have very fond memories of Unity. But then, after I closed down, after I closed the Palm Beach Center for Living after 11 years, it was, I was not in it to be a fundraiser. It was really, I just said, I didn't get into this to be a fundraiser. So I just said, I want to be a minister. So anyway, when I came up here, I had no idea that this would occur, that I'd start Namaste, but it's here, and I'm so grateful. And I bring many lessons learned from Florida with me up here. And so I took the good stuff and left the bad stuff. Well, no, none of it's bad. It was good lessons. But anyway, there's many paths. Julie says, as she mentioned, with her grandmother, and many of us came from other paths and spiritualities and religions, and they all serve their purpose. All paths have led us right here to this moment, though. And there's no mistake by where you're sitting, who you're sitting next to, who you talk to today. You really realize the synchronicity and the flow of life is beyond amazing. And so I do really pay attention to all of these things in my life. And so one of my favorite, in our mission statement, it basically says we're here to be the message. We're here to walk the talk. Mm-hmm. And it's as I said last week in my talk, for crying out loud, don't you want some return on investment? Because we've been doing this for most of us many years, and it's like, if I'm going to do this and put this much energy and time into it, by golly, I want to feel good. I want to be happy. I want to be prosperous. I want this to work in my life. And I have to say that it is. It's working in a huge way. And I see it working in a huge way in all of our lives. This, one of the greatest compliments that came to me this past couple of weeks was when a woman who comes to our mastery group said, you know, I love this group because everyone is so committed in their walk and their talk. And I was like, thank you. That was the greatest compliment to not me, but the center and everyone who comes here. People feel the love and the sincerity and the authenticity from when they walk in the door. You know, there's, I got an interesting email this morning. And it was someone who said, just don't lie to me. Did you sign a petition for the wall? And I'm like, what? I said, they said it was on your Facebook page. And I'm like, what? No, I did not sign the petition for the wall, I promise. But anyway, it's interesting. So some things do, I guess, land on Facebook that we don't even know about. But no, I did not sign that petition. So if you all saw that, not that it, but my point I'm choosing to make, but those who signed it, bless them. I mean, I am for everybody, you know. I think we have to be for everybody and for our president, for our politicians. We may not agree with what another person's doing, even within our own community here. We may not agree or like what other people are doing or thinking, but the truth is we can be for them. We can love them and hold them in that space without agreeing with everything everyone says and does. That's part of the beauty, I think, of our center here, is that we do allow each other that freedom to be who they need to be. And this is so important, too, is, you know, we're blazing our own trail here. You know, we're not a Unity or a Baptist or Presbyterian or Catholic church. We don't have someone to tell us what to do and to control us, whatever. We're just figuring it out every day. And even though we are affiliates of the Alliance of Divine Love Ministry, and there is great support there, they don't dictate a code of behavior or what we teach, or the only thing that is really requested is that we choose to come from the greatest degree of love. So people sometimes say, well, there's so many different things going on, and I say, yeah, that's a good thing. And it seems like even some of them may oppose the others, but they don't, because if it's bringing light and peace in your life, then it's a good thing. And I don't have to agree with it or even like what's being said sometimes, but it's all good, because if someone is being lifted, then that's an awesome thing. And so one thing that we're going to have in a couple of weeks, 2 weeks from today, where Kelly's going to be speaking at the next NOM Talk, we're going to have a volunteer appreciation luncheon. She's going to talk about service, and we are so blessed by selfless service of so many people. And this place could not operate without the selfless service of so many people. And we want to acknowledge and honor those people who have given so generously of their time and talents, and everyone is welcome to join us. And great things in business are never done by one person, they're done by a team. And you know, we need a team. We are a team, and we're a family. So it's a great journey that we're on together. So a couple of things that I want to close with is Steve Jobs. I love the guy's message. You know, he was such a powerful influence in our world. And a couple of his quotes, number one, he says, don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your inner voice. And so often, and I know how many times in the past I've given my power away, because it's like, oh, well, they say this, well, maybe they're right. And no more do I choose to do that. I don't want other people's opinions or voice to drown my inner voice out. We all have to stand in our power. And sometimes that's a scary place to be, but that's how we grow, that's how we wake up. Shakespeare says, love all, trust few, and do wrong to no one. And so yes, we can love everybody. And when it says trust few, I take that as, you know, don't give your power away. I've learned to trust, you know, God. That's where I put my faith and trust, in spirit. Trust in God would settle every problem that we had. And so we have to be willing to stand in that power, holding God's hand. And we need to have the courage to follow our heart and our intuition. because they already know what we truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. So pay attention to what's that little still small voice in your heart. You know, our path has led us to this moment, and I think our best is yet to come. Sometimes it feels like a wrecking ball comes in every now and then, and I'm like, oh God, not another one. And but you know, I see that as a great opportunity just to reorganize and sort of clean up and move forward and get stronger. So I see the challenges as a gift and a blessing, not as a curse anymore. And this is, I've read this in the past, but I think this surmises our Namaste Center to a T. And this is also a Steve Jobs quote. And he says, here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs and the square holes. The ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do.
Yes.
And I just love that quote. And, you know, I know that some people think that, you know, what's that Namaste Center? People have a whole different idea of what we are, I think, than what we are. And that's okay. I kind of like the mystique around that. But, you know, we're good folk here, and, you know, we've got big hearts. And so it's a great place. And, yeah, we are the misfits and the square pegs in the round hole, and that's a good thing. And I want to close. We were in our ministry class last week. We were talking about the Lord's Prayer, and we pulled out the Aramaic prayer. And I'll close with this, because Aramaic, Amen, means sealed in trust, faith, and truth. And so it is. Amen. Namaste.